Not gonna lie, I never thought I'd ever see the day when the Clone Wars would return. But here we are in 2020, and yes, I know that the show ended a while ago, but I couldn't not talk about one of my favorite shows of all time, especially with the way that it ended. So, let's talk about the 7th and final season of Star Wars The Clone Wars. You know the drill by now. I will be talking about very specific elements of the show, dissecting episodes, so if you don't want to be spoiled, then click away. So, when it was first announced that the Clone Wars would be returning, I couldn't believe it. It was perhaps one of the single best things that Lucasfilm had ever done outside of the films, but with the acquisition of Lucasfilm by Disney, they quickly scrapped the show after a shortened 6th season. However, I guess prompted by the divisive Last Jedi fans and the box office failures of Solo, they decided to give it one last ride. And so, in February 2020, Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 7 released its first episode. Now, I'm going to say something that may be a little controversial here, and I'm going to say it up front so that you guys have a better understanding of where I'm coming from. Just know that I have all the love in the world for this show, and perhaps it's because of the extremely lofty expectations that I say this, but I was disappointed with the 7th season of The Clone Wars. To me, again, as someone who absolutely adores this show, it felt like out of the 12 episodes, about half of them were basically waste episodes, and that just disheartened me a lot. I kept waiting for the show to really pick up, and when it did, it was too little too late, and that was disappointing to me. But to reiterate, my disappointment mostly comes from me having these unbelievably lofty expectations for the 7th season. Because what we got in those 12 episodes ranged from pretty terrible to absolutely amazing, with just about everything in between. But overall, I thought the season was good. I just didn't think it was good enough. Let's talk about it. The first arc in the first 4 episodes is the Bad Batch arc, where these experimental, enhanced, defective clones are sent out on a mission with Captain Rex and later Anakin, Mace Windu, and Obi-Wan. Now, right away, before I say anything else, I want to commend the animators tenfold. I mean, we've come so far in 12 years because the first season looks so clunky and unfinished if you watch it now, but slowly the show began to become more smoother in the animation department, and it just turned out so great. But season 7 just ramped everything up visually to another level. This show is almost animated film level good, as in, I didn't believe that this was made for television. I thought it could have been shown on an enormous TV screen in a theater, and it would have still looked gorgeous anyways. I also love how everything is beginning to line up with Revenge of the Sith, especially Anakin Skywalker. He looks so Hayden Christensen, yet so Clone Wars Anakin in this season, and that's just something I had always been dying to see, the merging of the series and the films. So in the first episode, the Bad Batch basically gets to show off their abilities as they go infiltrate a separatist base in search of Echo, one of the clone troopers in the 501st that was presumed dead in seasons 3 or 4 at the Citadel. It was so good to see Rex taking command again. He's such a good character, and I'm glad they gave him a lot more to do this season as well, especially considering that he survives and makes it through Rebels and beyond. The Bad Batch members themselves are very fun as well. They each have their own little quirks and personality traits about them that make them work really well as a unit, which I think is the point of this arc. I do want to point out, though, that this arc is actually done a long time ago. What I mean by this is that by the time Season 6 had come out about 7 years ago and Clone Wars had gotten cancelled, the animators had already begun pre-production on a bunch of new episodes and arcs, the Bad Batch being one of them. So actually, even though these episodes released one at a time, once a week, you could watch the entire story online, I believe, albeit unfinished and not rendered. At any rate, I feel like the first arc was a very good introductory arc for the first season of Clone Wars. However, I do not feel like this was a good introductory arc for this season of Clone Wars. And again, we'll get into this later, but this does lean into one of my biggest complaints about this season. More on that later, and you'll see a common thread through my criticism, so you might be able to guess what it is by the time I bring it up later. At the end of the day, these 4 episodes were enjoyable. They had excellent action scenes, and, oh man, seeing Anakin Skywalker wreck shop and just go after Admiral Trench with little hints of the dark side peeking out, that was just awesome. I loved how much we were beginning to really overlap here, and Anakin just felt so much more gritty and ready to fight. And also, I absolutely love the line where Obi-Wan says, "Will you tell Padme I said hello?" Because of course Obi-Wan would know. Of course he'd have figured it out by now, and it just makes him that much better of a friend for covering for Anakin, even though it was probably not the best move in hindsight. But it just accentuates their friendship, and it was so great to see that, and I loved that so much. But let's move on to the second arc with Ahsoka and Coruscant and with the Pikes. Guys, I hated this arc so much. I can't tell you how much I actually despised these 4 episodes. The fact that one of these episodes legitimately did nothing at all with the characters ending in the same place they started, and I mean nothing, literally, to further the story, that infuriated me. This is the final season, and you couldn't have done anything better than this? Honestly, this just felt so much like a filler arc. Almost like a C-squad of storytellers were working on this while Dave Filoni and the A-team were doing the final 4 episodes. Because the storytelling was so lazy and the characters of Trace and Rafa were just so unbelievably bland and boring, and they made terrible decisions throughout the entirety of the arc. I'm serious in saying that I can hardly find anything that I liked about these episodes because they were just terrible, in my opinion. During those 4 weeks when these episodes were released one at a time, it was just an excruciating wait to get to the final 4 episodes that we knew were coming. I won't say that much more about these episodes though, because A, I don't really want to spend that much more time on them, and I want to get to the next 4, and B, they're just bland and terrible, and even Ahsoka gets a little annoying towards the end. So let's move on to the final 4 episodes. The episodes that we really wanted to see. This was it. This was the ending that we were all waiting for, and man, when I finished the first episode, I was reeling. The first episode of the 4-episode arc that ended the Clone Wars, episode 9, ironically, was one of the best episodes of television, anything that I've ever seen. I can't emphasize enough how much I absolutely love this first episode. Just watching Anakin and Obi-Wan tackle a strategic battle together, and Anakin just going in head first and being his usual rash, bold self, but ultimately getting it done, with Obi-Wan just sighing in resignation in the background, that made me so unbelievably happy. Because that is Anakin and Obi-Wan. Not the Anakin who goes, he's overly critical, he never listens, it's not fair. Nope. This is Anakin and Obi-Wan. From there, we move on to the reunion of Anakin and Ahsoka, and it's just so tragic to see them meet for the last time, especially in hindsight, when you remember Ahsoka saying in Rebels that the last time she saw him, he was running off to save the Chancellor. And you get to see that moment right here, which is just so amazing of Dave Filoni to do. And of course, visually, these episodes are stunning. They somehow cranked up the 11 that they were at in the first 8 episodes and dialed it up to 100, because the animation is legitimately so gorgeous. And I have to take this time to give a massive shout out to Kevin Kiner, who is the composer of this series and these final episodes, because I genuinely thought that when the first episode ended, I would see music by John Williams in the credits. I'm not kidding. I thought John Williams composed the music for the 9th episode. But it was Kevin Kiner, and even he cranked it up to 100, just pulling out every single trick he had in the book, using the Force theme, the classic Star Wars theme. It was just perfect. So we move away from Anakin and Obi-Wan to Rex and Ahsoka on Mandalore, where, Maul's still hanging out. And then we get to see the meat of this 4-episode arc, which is Maul and Ahsoka. And I love the ending of the first episode where Maul is still waiting for Kenobi but finds Ahsoka instead. From there, the episodes sort of blur together, but we do get to see one of the best lightsaber fights in the history of Star Wars ever. And I mean ever. They even got Ray Park to come back and do some motion capture from Maul, and the result is just electric. It's so unbelievably gorgeous to look at, and the stakes are just so high as well. I love how Filoni included the notion that Maul knew about Anakin turning to the dark side, and that actually if Ahsoka had listened to Maul, Darth Vader may never have been born. But of course she wouldn't listen to him for good reason, and that just makes it so tragic. And then we get to see Order 66 through Ahsoka's eyes. Little plot hole, though, I think. Rex says in Rebels that he never betrayed his Jedi, but he kinda did. Was he referring to Anakin? Because I guess technically he didn't betray Anakin, but he did try to kill Ahsoka, so there's that. But still, seeing the clones and Rex turn and just hearing the Revenge of the Sith dialogue mixed with Matt Lanter's voice, it was just so well done. And we have another epic Star Wars hallway scene now, aside from Rogue One, with Maul just wrecking shop walking down the halls of the cruiser, which was brilliant. The last episode, though, felt a little flat to me. It didn't quite have the oomph that I thought the last episode of this entire series would, and I don't know exactly why. It's not like they did anything egregiously wrong, and the last 5 minutes of the episode are just haunting and beautiful in every way. There was no other way they could have ended the series other than with Vader. That was beautiful, and for a moment you can see his eyes through the mask, which was just an incredible detail. But this leads me to my complaints about this season, and perhaps this is just me being a sad Star Wars fan who knows they won't get any more Clone Wars ever. But to me, in my opinion, this season was too short and wasted far too many episodes and moments to be called the rightful conclusion of the Clone Wars. In my opinion, Dave Filoni, while yes, delivering one of the most beautiful endings to a series ever, missed so many opportunities that it just frustrated me beyond belief. Let's go back to the Bad Batch arc. Again, I enjoy the first few episodes, and I think it's a great way to get back into Clone Wars. But guys, the season was only 12 episodes. Not only were there only 12 episodes, but they were still 20 minutes each. If the final 4 episodes were 40 or even 30 minutes apiece, I would have been fine with the first arc. But as it stands, they spent a third of the show on new characters that never showed up again. That was a wasted opportunity. And then we have the second arc, which again was just an absolute travesty that Filoni thought it would be a good idea to develop that arc for another third of the show. To me, those episodes were just atrocious. You know what would have been better? How about an entire 4-episode arc dedicated to Obi-Wan and Anakin, say, hunting Count Dooku or something like that? Because as I watched the first episode of the final arc, I realized what made me love this show so much were the characters, and there just wasn't enough of them. And I don't mean random new characters like Trace and Rafa. I mean characters like Obi-Wan, Anakin, Mace Windu, Count Dooku, or General Grievous. Literally for Anakin and Obi-Wan, you see all their screen time in the trailers. That's it. I would have just loved an Obi-Wan Anakin arc to start this season, and then if Filoni wanted to reintroduce Ahsoka, he could have done another 4-episode arc, but, not with Trace and Rafa. And even with the last 4 episodes, there were just missed opportunities in my eyes. Again, like I said, what we got was great, but there just could have been more. First of all, I think it was a colossal mistake to limit each episode to the same running time as any other episode. They were supposed to close out 7 seasons. They couldn't at least extend the last episode by 10 minutes? What would they have filled the 10 minutes with? What about Revenge of the Sith through the eyes of the Clone Wars characters? I understand that Filoni didn't want to cross over the films and shows too much, and I presume his reasoning was because, well, we can always rewatch Revenge of the Sith, but his job was to fill in the blanks. But think about this. What if you saw part of the Obi-Wan Anakin battle on Mustafar, and as Anakin was laying burning on the ground, you can just see him thinking back to Ahsoka and to Padme, and to all the adventures they had in the Clone Wars. That's adding so much depth to what was already there, and it would have made the scene so much more powerful. Please remember though that this is just my opinion, and in all likelihood, I held the season to too high of a standard, and that's why I'm disappointed. I know a lot of you out there love it, and I completely respect that. So at the end of the day, while I did enjoy over half of what we got in Season 7, I can't say that I wasn't disappointed. I really was. And that makes me sad because I know we'll never get to see these characters in new adventures again. Honestly, the Clone Wars series could have gone on for 4 more seasons if they really wanted to, but I know Filoni wants to move on. So I just hope whatever he works on next, he brings the same level of heart and passion to that as well. I'm going to give Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 7 a B- and a 7 out of 10. Comment down below with your favorite moment from The Clone Wars Season 7. I'd love to know what you guys thought. Make sure to subscribe and hit the like button to support the channel, and if you'd like to see more, make sure to click on the videos on the screen right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.